I found a door in my apartment that wasn't there before part one. The first imprint. I'm not writing this to warn anyone. I'm writing it because something is slowly taking pieces of my life, and I need proof that I existed before it finished. If this account suddenly stops updating, don't assume the worst. Assume the replacement worked. The sound that wasn't loud. The sound that woke me wasn't sharp enough to be alarming. That's what made it dangerous. It was gentle, measured, intentional. 3 soft taps, not hurried, not aggressive, patient. At first, my half-asleep brain filed it under background noise. Old pipes. Someone closing a door somewhere else in the building. My mind reaching for comfort. Then it happened again. 3 taps, same rhythm, same spacing. That's when I noticed something that made my chest tighten. The sound wasn't coming from outside my bedroom. It was coming from inside my apartment. 3:17 a.m. I checked my phone. 3:17 a.m. The exact time didn't register as important yet. It would later, much later. I lay there, holding my breath, listening for a 4th knock. Nothing. Silence returned so completely it felt staged, like the pause after a joke that hasn't landed yet. I told myself I imagined it. Then the floor creaked in the hallway. 1 step, then another. Slow, bare, careful. Someone was walking in my apartment. Counting what you know, I live alone. No pets, no roommates, no overnight guests. My apartment layout is burned into my memory. I've paced it during phone calls, insomnia, anxiety attacks. I know it like muscle memory. Still, when I stood up and turned on the hallway light, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. At the end of the hall, where there had always been a blank off-white wall, stood a door, a narrow wooden door. Too narrow, actually. Like it had been made for someone thinner than a normal person. The wood was old, dry, scratched in long vertical lines, as if something had dragged its fingers down it repeatedly. There was no handle, just a dark oval stain where one should have been. My first thought wasn't fear. It was confusion so strong it felt physical. That's not possible. The brain fights back, the human mind hates discontinuity. So it started rewriting memory in real time. Maybe it was always there. Maybe you just never noticed. Maybe you're still dreaming. I walked closer. The door felt wrong. Not visually, spatially, like it didn't belong to the geometry of the hallway. Like it was interrupting the space instead of occupying it. Then it knocked again. This time from inches away, 3 taps. The sound was softer now, more intimate. Like whoever or whatever was on the other side had leaned in close. I froze, and that's when I realized the knocking wasn't asking to be let in. It was checking if I was aware. The first mistake, I whispered, "Hello?" The knocking stopped instantly, not faded, not slowed, stopped, as if it had been waiting for exactly that, for me to acknowledge it. The hallway felt colder. Not physically, emotionally, like the air itself was paying attention. I backed away slowly. I didn't turn my back on the door. I didn't blink. Something in me knew that was important. Sleep. Without sleep, I don't remember getting back into bed. I remember lying there with my eyes open until the dark turned gray. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. When I checked the hallway, the door was gone. No scratches. No outline. Just the familiar wall. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. I laughed, out loud. A shaky, hysterical sound that didn't feel like relief so much as release from something tightening inside my chest all night. Then I went to the kitchen. The note. The paper was taped to my refrigerator with a piece of clear tape. No wrinkles, no smudges. Like it had been placed carefully. It said, "You did the right thing." Below it, written darker, pressed harder into the paper. "It learns faster when you answer." I sat on the kitchen floor for almost an hour. Because there was no sign of forced entry, no missing items, no explanation. And because deep down I already knew something terrifying. That note wasn't a warning. It was feedback. Something has changed. The rest of the day felt slightly off. Not dramatically, subtly. My reflection lagged a fraction of a second too long in mirrors. My thoughts felt echoed. I kept replaying the sound of the knocking, not the volume. The confidence, Whatever was behind that door hadn't been guessing. It had known exactly where to knock. End of part 1 that night. I didn't turn off the hallway light. At 3:17 a.m., it turned off by itself, and I heard the handle being installed. Part 2, the voice that knew my memories. I didn't sleep. Not because I was afraid to close my eyes, but because every time I did, I felt like something else was opening theirs. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the building, pipes, electricity, distant traffic. Normal sounds, too normal. At 3:16 a.m., my phone buzzed. A reminder notification. I don't remember setting it. It said only one word: listen. The first voice at exactly 3:17 a.m., the hallway light clicked on. I didn't touch the switch. I didn't move. I stared at the bedroom doorway, waiting for the door at the end of the hall to appear again. It didn't. Instead, I heard a voice, soft, close, coming from right outside my bedroom door. My mother's voice. "Sweetheart?" It said. My chest tightened so fast I couldn't breathe. She used to call me that when I was a kid. Only then. Only when she was worried. She's been dead for 6 years. It knows the right tone. "I know you're awake," the voice continued. "You always had trouble sleeping when you were scared." The cadence was perfect. The slight pause before scared, the warmth layered over concern. That voice wasn't mimicking sound, it was mimicking memory. I didn't answer. I pressed my face into the pillow and squeezed my eyes shut. The voice sighed, disappointed. "Okay," it said gently. "We'll try again later." Footsteps moved away from my door. Bare feet on tile, unhurried, confident. The morning after, in the morning, my apartment looked normal. Too normal. No door. No note. No sign of anything unusual. But I knew something had changed. The silence felt occupied. Like I was no longer alone, not physically, but narratively. Like my life had gained an observer. I called in sick to work. I spent the day pacing, checking corners, standing too close to walls to see if they would breathe back. I checked mirrors constantly. My reflection still matched. For now. The neighbor's story. I went downstairs again. The old woman answered the door immediately, like she'd been waiting. "You heard it speak," she said. Again, not a question. She invited me inside. Her apartment smelled like old paper and dust. The walls were covered in photographs, families, gatherings, faces from decades ago. Some of the faces had been scratched out. "You don't recognize them," she said, following my gaze. "That's the point." She told me the thing behind the door doesn't invent. It extracts memories, voices, moments of vulnerability. "It can't create," she said. "It can only rearrange what already belongs to you. Why it chooses the lonely, I asked her why it came for people like me. She laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Because no one double-checks a life that doesn't overlap much with others," she said. "Lonely people are easy to overwrite." She told me about a man who lived 2 floors above her years ago. Quiet, routine-driven, predictable. One day, he left his apartment and never came back. Except someone else did. Same face, same clothes, same job, different habits. He started waving when no one remembered him waving before. He stopped drinking coffee. He began standing too close to people. No one noticed. No one wanted to. The second rule, she gave me another rule. "Never tell it your full name," she said. Names anchor things. I realized with a cold twist in my stomach that it already knew mine. Night 3, it gets closer that night. I heard it speaking again. Not from the hallway, from inside the walls. Fragments of voices. Friends. Co-workers. People I hadn't thought about in years. All woven together, like it was practicing. Testing combinations. At 3:17 a.m., it knocked again, but not on the door. On my bedroom wall, 3 taps, exactly where my head rested. I slid down onto the floor and pressed my back against the opposite wall. That's when it said something it shouldn't have known. "Do you still blame yourself for the shed?" The memory I never shared. I hadn't told anyone about that. Not friends, not therapists, not family. When I was 8, I wandered into the woods behind my childhood home. I found a shed I'd never seen before. Inside, I heard crying. I looked through a crack in the wood and saw a boy chained to the floor. I ran. I didn't tell anyone until hours later. By the time police came, the shed was empty. I've carried that guilt my entire life. And now something was using it as a key. You could have helped, the voice whispered. You always walk away, I screamed. The sound came out raw and animal. The voice laughed. Not cruelly, affectionately. It explains itself. I don't hurt people, it said. I finished them. It told me something then. Something important. It doesn't replace people immediately. It lives alongside them first, learns cadence, learns choices, learns regrets. Only when it understands you better than you understand yourself does it step out. The first physical mark, the next morning, I found scratches on my arm, thin, parallel, like fingernails. I don't remember scratching myself. My nails were trimmed. The scratches weren't painful. They were testing depth. The countdown. That evening, there was a new note on my fridge. Different handwriting, more confident. Tomorrow night, I will speak using your voice. Under it, if no one notices, you'll know what that means. End of part 2. It's 2:58 a.m. now. I can hear it practicing my laugh perfectly, and I'm starting to understand the real horror. It doesn't want my body. It wants my place. Part 3. The world accepts it. I used to think the scariest part would be hearing it speak. I was wrong. The scariest part was realizing the world didn't resist it at all. The first test, the next morning, my phone rang. It was my sister. We don't talk often. Not because we don't care, just because life slowly pulled us into different orbits. When I answered, she sounded confused. Did you call me last night? She asked. My stomach dropped. No, I said immediately. What time? There was a pause. 3:17 a.m. I felt cold spread through my chest, slow and heavy. What did I say? I asked. She hesitated. You didn't really say anything, she said. You just breathed for a few seconds. Then you laughed. You've always had that nervous laugh. I hung up without explaining. Because I remembered something. I hadn't laughed in years. It uses my name correctly later that day. I went outside for the first time since this started. I needed witnesses, people, noise. At the grocery store, someone tapped my shoulder. A man about my age, friendly smile. Hey, he said, using my name. We still on for tonight? I stared at him. I'm sorry, I said. I think you have the wrong person. He frowned. You're not funny anymore, he said. You said you wanted to talk. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop lying to him. I left the store without buying anything. The neighbor is gone. When I returned home, the old woman's door was open. That alone was strange. She never left it open. Inside, the apartment was empty. Furniture gone. Photos gone. Dust outlines where everything used to be. Like she'd never lived there. I asked the building manager. He blinked at me. There's never been anyone in that unit, he said. It's been empty for years, I knew then. It wasn't just replacing people. It was erasing their resistance first. The explanation I didn't want that night. It spoke openly, not from the hallway. From the living room, sitting, relaxed, using my voice. You don't understand what I am, it said. I'm not a creature. I'm not a ghost. I didn't move. I'm a correction, it continued. A continuity solution. It told me something that made my stomach turn. Reality doesn't care about individuals. It cares about flow, routine, patterns, predictability. People who live quietly, alone, and repetitively create gaps. And gaps invite replacements. It shows me the evidence. It made me look. It guided me through memories that weren't mine. People like me. Same type of apartment. Same isolation. Same silence. They resisted at first. Then they vanished. Not violently, logistically. One missed call, one forgotten habit, one change no one questioned. Until there was no original left to compare. The bruise that spreads, the bruise on my neck darkened overnight. It wasn't sore, it felt hollow. Like something had pressed into me long enough to leave an imprint. I tried covering it. Makeup didn't help. The color seemed to absorb light. It starts using my body. The next day, I lost time. Hours. I'd blink and suddenly be somewhere else. Standing in front of my sink. Holding my phone. Mid-sentence in a voicemail I didn't remember recording. The messages were calm, friendly, convincing. They sounded like me on my best day. That terrified me. The breaking point that night, it asked me a question, not mockingly, genuinely. Do you want to stop being tired? It asked. I almost answered. That's when I understood the final truth. It doesn't force entry. It offers relief. The door returns at 3:17 a.m. The door appeared again. This time it was open. Inside was my apartment. Perfectly copied, but cleaner, brighter, less worn. A better version. I can take over now, it said. You can rest. I stepped back. It didn't follow. It smiled. You already let me in, it said. I'm just waiting for you to step out. End of part 3. I've started leaving notes for myself. I don't know if I'm the one writing them. The handwriting changes. Tomorrow night, I think it will finish. If there's a part 4, you'll know I lost. I stopped trying to fight it the way a person fights danger. That was my first real moment of clarity. You can't fight something that isn't attacking you. You can only resist something that's offering you relief. Losing the edges of myself by the 5th night, my memories no longer felt anchored. They still existed, but they felt shared. Like files someone else had opened and was casually scrolling through. I would remember moments from my childhood, and halfway through the memory, something would shift. A detail would feel optimized, cleaner, less emotional. That's when I realized it wasn't stealing memories, it was editing them, removing hesitation, removing guilt, removing weakness, turning my life into a version that fit better. The last rule, I found one final note taped to the inside of my bathroom mirror. Different handwriting again, calm, confident, almost elegant. You can't destroy what replaces you. You can only make yourself difficult to overwrite. I understood what that meant. Immediately. Noise, unpredictability, disruption. I smashed my routine. I stayed awake during the day and slept at random hours. I rearranged furniture constantly. I wrote nonsense phrases on every surface. I stopped being consistent. For the first time since this started, it seemed annoyed. It shows its true face at 3:17 a.m. The door appeared one last time, wide open. No knocking, no patience. Inside wasn't a copy of my apartment this time. It was empty, white, limitless, and standing in the center was the thing that wore my face. Only now, it wasn't pretending anymore. Its movements were too smooth. Its smile held too long. Its eyes didn't blink when mine did. You're exhausting yourself, it said. You don't need to suffer to exist. I asked it the only question that mattered. What happens to me? It paused, then answered honestly. You become unnecessary. The truth about the door wasn't a threshold. It was a handoff point, a place where identity was transferred cleanly. No death, no disappearance, just continuity. The world doesn't notice replacements, it notices interruptions. The final choice, I realized then that winning didn't mean surviving. It meant breaking the process. So I did the one thing it couldn't predict. I invited someone over, a coworker. Someone who barely knew me. Someone outside my pattern. When they arrived, the door vanished. The voice stopped. The pressure lifted. The thing didn't scream. It simply withdrew. Because it couldn't act while I was being witnessed. What remains, it's been weeks. I still live here. The door hasn't returned. But sometimes at 3:17 a.m., I wake up knowing something is watching, waiting, learning new habits. I don't live alone anymore. I leave lights on. I change routines constantly. I keep people around, even when it's uncomfortable. Because now I understand the rule it never said out loud. As long as you are observed, you are real. Final entry. If you're reading this and you live alone, don't fear the dark. Fear the quiet. And if you ever find a door that wasn't there before, don't open it. The world won't stop it. Only you can.